Okay, sounds like we're going. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another class for School for A Course in Miracles. And I thought today, since I guess it's like 2 or 3 in the morning, plus or minus an hour or two, depending on what part of the country you're in, or if you're across the pond, earlier than that. The solstice is just around the corner in the next 24 hours, which is metaphorically the time when the long, at least in the northern hemisphere anyway, the longest night and the shortest day. I think what a good symbol for how we get to that place in our mind where we were just talking about hell. we look at how hellish the dream we made up on our own is, and get to the point where Helen and Bill got was, there must be a better way. And that's kind of like, the Christmas star in our mind. It's like, okay, there's a bright light there that appears when we, are truly asking for help. And I was thinking also, kind of astronomically about supernovas and black holes, and there's some, speculation that couple thousand years ago there might have been a supernova or a constellation or something, in the biblical story. But regardless of that, I think that the symbolism of a star guiding us, and that star being Holy Spirit, metaphorically again, in the world of form. But when we get to that place in our mind where we say, this hellish stuff's got to go, that's usually when we look for a real alternative. So I thought I would read a little bit from that, but first I thought I would um, talk about I actually wrote a few things. So let me just see. Let's see. So this is about the solstice. Symbolically, tonight will be the longest night of the year, and tomorrow the shortest day. But it's the point where metaphorically we reach the point where we realize that we've turned the corner in our forgiveness classroom. We're no longer completely insane, and despite lots of residual resistance, we're committed to listening to Holy Spirit and hearing the glad message it gives us ceaselessly, that the Son of God is innocent. Christ is reborn in our mind, joining with our inner kindness teacher as the one we truly are, to look at insanity without condemnation and see that atonement is freedom, and we're profoundly grateful for the dawning of that awareness in our mind. So in order to get to that place, I think we need a lot of practice. At least I'll speak for myself. I need a lot of practice over and over and over again of just, remembering to ask Holy Spirit for help, and to have that help in pointing out the difference between the two thought systems. And I think today's workbook lesson, 129, really, highlights that very nicely. The previous workbook lesson, 128, is also kind of a companion lesson. There's this world, the world I see holds nothing that I want. And then when we go to the next one, beyond this world, there is a world I want. So I think we get to that pivotal point, where we recognize that, like Dave was telling his folks in the car, this must not be heaven, by process of elimination, kind of thing. So I think that's kind of that place that we get to whenever we're not at peace, and we can look at all the different moments throughout the day when we're not at peace and say, that's our cue, that's our trigger, that's our a moment for using Holy Spirit to help us with the cognitive dissonance, as psychologists call it, that just putting side by side the two thought systems together. So I thought I'd start out by reading, continue by reading a little bit from Ken Wapnick. I was listening to one of the things he was on one of his audios yesterday, and it seemed like it fit really nicely. So let me find that here. Let's see, I think I saved it. Where did it go? Oh, here it is. Yeah. Okay. So he says, voluntary commitment. Well, this is actually my comment. This is voluntary commitment, or a little willingness, becomes abundant willingness after we get the proof of the results that forgiveness really works. So Ken says, The holy instant is of greater value now to you than its unholy seeming counterpart, and you have learned what you really want but one. This is no time for sadness, perhaps confusion, but hardly discouragement. You have a real relationship, and it has meaning. And that's, he's quoting there from chapter 20, section 6, paragraph 12. So Ken says, we're still somewhat resistant, but we're beginning to understand that we will feel much better living a life of inclusion rather than a life of exclusion. That we'd really feel much better by observing ourselves on stage rather than continuing to believe that we really are that person on stage. That's the holy instant. The initial stages can seem quite upsetting because we're still trying to keep a foot in both camps. We're trying to learn this lesson, but at the same time, there's a part of us that doesn't want to leave. We don't want to leave the altar dripping with blood, as long as I can have the illusion that it's not my blood. Enter projection, stage left, right? Okay. We're not quite sure we want to let go of our specialness. On the other hand, we're beginning to realize that this is awful. So we're still in a kind of no man's land, but at least now we're looking at both. And of course, that's what this whole course is trying to do, is to look at the difference, the contrast between the special relationship and the holy one, the contrast between constant criticism, judgment, and hate and forgiveness. The more we can see both of them together, the easier it will be to make the correct choice. The relationship I have with you, in which I no longer perceive us as living on a battleground, where I'm trying to steal from you and you're trying to steal from me, now we're beginning to see that we're the same. Same ego, same Holy Spirit, same power to choose between them. And there's the little blue dot in his ubiquitous chart of the decision maker, that little pivotal point in the mind that we're always at 24/7, even though we can deceive and delude and distract ourselves, in Olympic proportions with all the things in the world that seem to be the important firefighting item of the moment, and then we get back to that. So what I thought I'd start before we read the lesson is to reread the real alternative, which is in chapter 31, section 4. And I'm just going to read through it fairly quickly because I think it really covers that pivotal point. And it goes, there's a tendency to think, this is on page 653 in the third edition of the English version. There's a tendency to think the world can offer consolation and escape from problems that its purpose is to keep. Why should this be? Because it is a place where choice among illusions seems to be the only choice, and you are in control of outcomes of your choosing. Thus, you think, within the narrow band from birth to death, a little time is given you to use for you alone, a time when everyone conflicts with you, but you can choose which road will lead you out of conflict and away from difficulties that concern you not. All those projections again, right? Yet they are your concern. If I'm upset, it's because I'm I'm the one choosing the teacher of upset. Right? How then can you escape from them? By leaving them behind. What must go with you, you will take with you whatever road you choose to walk along. So hence the real alternative. He continues, real choice is no illusion, but the world has none to offer. All its roads but lead to disappointment, nothingness, and death. There is no choice in its alternatives. Seek not escape from problems here. The world was made that problems could not be escaped. Be not deceived by all the different names its roads are given. They have but one end, and each is but the means to gain that end. For here it is that all roads will lead, however differently they seem to start. However differently they seem to go. Their end is certain, for there is no choice among them. All of them will lead to death. On some you travel gaily for a while before the bleakness enters, and on some the thorns are felt at once. The choice is not what the ending will be, but when it comes. So here's the wheel of misfortune. If you can imagine that the other day we were talking about a periscope, which is ego's version of a periscope that's pointed down into the darkness instead of up into the light. And with that periscope, we can spin it around the wheel of misfortune and look at all these different things that seem to be special love, special hate, distractions. And as it spins around, we get engrossed and enthralled by each and every one of them until we realize, wait a minute, they're all the same. They're all the same sleight of hand of the ego, trying to get me to be mindless, trying to get me to say that my peace is contingent on a projection of within a dream. And oh, by the way, it's not my fault. and Holy Spirit says, hey, you can pull up that periscope and look around in the real world. And so that's what he's trying to tell us, is we need to keep our curriculum is a not no curriculum, because we need to look at all the craziness that we made up until we reach that point. It's really a very motivationally oriented course by bringing together again the two thought systems side by side so we can see them. And I'll have a little comparison chart here in a little while. There is no choice where every end is sure. Perhaps you would prefer to try them all before you really learn they are but one. Whenever I read that, I think of those ads in the 50s, 60s, be the first kid on your block to have whatever, or try all in the back of the magazines, that kind of thing. But that's kind of, the ego's ploy, is like, well, you haven't tried this permutation of things in the dream. You haven't tried this relationship, this job, this place to live. You haven't tried this, fill in the blanks of whatever it is, some, health regimen, all the things, again, around that wheel of misfortune that we keep spinning the dial and think, oh, well, this next thing will be the one that does it for me. So he continues, there is no choice where every end is sure. Perhaps you would prefer to try them all before you really learn they are but one. The roads this world can offer seem to be quite large in number, but the time must come when everyone begins to see how like they are to one another. Men have died on seeing this because they saw no way except the pathways offered by the world, and learning they led nowhere, lost their hope. And this is, to me, is the pivotal point again. And yet this was the time they could have learned their greatest lesson. All must reach this point and go beyond it. It is true indeed that there is no choice at all within the world, but this is not the lesson in itself. The lesson has a purpose, and in this you come to understand what it is for. And that's oh yeah, I'm not upset for the reason I think. I've pulled up the scope that's looking down in the darkness, and with Holy Spirit's help, and now I'm seeing that there's no darkness in truth, in the real being that we all share either. So, that's the joyous discovery. But we need to look at all the darkness that we've projected first, as it comes up. You don't have to hire a backhoe to dig it up. It would just, every moment that we're not at peace, that becomes our opportunity to look at whatever seems to be happening and say, oh, this is my projection if I'm not peaceful. Do you have something to say, Tim? You look like you're... Nope. Okay. Alrighty. So he continues, why would you seek to try another road, another person, or another place when you have learned the way the lesson starts, but do not perceive what it is for? Its purpose is the answer to the search that all must undertake who still believe there is another answer to be found. Learn now without despair. That's worthy, 2 words worthy of underlining. There is no hope of answer in the world, but do not judge the lesson that is but begun with this. Seek not another signpost in the world that seems to point to still another road. No longer hope. Look for hope where there is none. Make fast your learning now and understand you but waste time unless you go beyond what you have learned to what is yet to learn. For from this lowest point we're learning lead to heights of happiness in which you see the purpose of the lesson shining clear, perfectly within your learning grasp. And what a great solstice metaphor here in that last sentence. The lowest point, the darkest, dark night of the soul, or many dark nights of the soul. I guess Douglas Adams called them dark tea times of the soul, right? Just the little mini black holes in our this story of separate selves then become opportunities to ask more deeply and practice more with greater devotion, the little willingness to turn our projections into moments of seeing opportunities for peace by seeing that it's forgivable. And then
one of the big things that's happening astrologically tomorrow, besides solstice itself, is Saturn and Jupiter are going to be on top of each other almost. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like a joining, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
they call it conjunction even with joining, conjunction.
Right.
And so it's like the two big guys, you know, and they're totally like incredibly different. It's almost like, you know, a coming together of seeming two very, very separate identities. And anyway, metaphorically speaking, we hope that's a symbol of of some kind of coming together, even on
Yeah.
the planet. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. That's cool. Yeah. I've been watching that, and I track the planet sometimes, and Saturn and Jupiter astrologically represent contraction and expansion. You know, two polarizations. So, you know, and the ego's world is filled with polarizations, and of course, on the level of form, the two planets never physically come together, but visually they seem to. And that's true with us. The course tells us bodies don't join, but minds are the only thing that really can join. So even if we're seemingly geographically separated, our minds can be right in the same place in just a split second. That's all it takes. So he continues, who would be willing to be turned away from all the roadways of the world unless he understood their real futility? Is it not needful that he should begin with this to seek another way instead? For while he sees a choice where there is none, what power of decision can he use? The great release of power must begin with learning where it really has a use, and what decision has power if it be applied in situations without choice. The learning that the world can offer but one choice, no matter what its form may be, is the beginning of the acceptance that there is a real alternative instead. To fight against this step is to defeat your purpose here. You did not come to learn to find a road the world does not contain. The search for different pathways in the world is but the search for different forms of truth. And this would keep the truth from being reached. So once again, he's saying, knock yourself out trying to find, truth within illusion, but it ain't going to happen. And eventually we'll all come to that conclusion in our own way, in our own time. And we need to be, infinitely patient for immediate results, right? So, and then it says, think not that happiness is ever found by following a road away from it. This makes no sense and cannot be the way. To you who seem to find this course to be too difficult to learn, let me repeat that I think this is one of the great comic moments. He says, to you who seem to find this course to be too difficult to learn, let me repeat that to achieve a goal, you must proceed in its direction, not away from it. There's a big clue. I think he's subtly or not so subtly hinting that we're looking for love in all the wrong places, among other things, right? Looking for peace, looking for joyousness, looking for, the true happiness that is really way beyond anything we can imagine is really there, but we don't find it in isolation, in within the belief in separation, and certainly in making the world do it for us. If this be difficult to understand, then is this course impossible to learn? It kind of reminds me of that Shakespearean sonnet 116. If truth can change, then I'm where Shakespeare says, if truth can change, basically, then everything's up for grabs, kind of thing. But only then, for otherwise, it is a simple teaching in the obvious. Okay, well, actually, there's only a few more paragraphs. I'll just finish it because I think it's such a powerful section. There is a choice that you have the power to make when you have seen the real alternatives. Until that point is reached, you have no choice, and you can but decide how you would choose the better to deceive yourself again. This course attempts to teach no more than that the power of decision cannot lie in choosing different forms of what is still the same illusion and the same mistake. So everything around that wheel of misfortune, the forms of the things that occupy us on a day-to-day basis may be dramatically different, but the content, if we're not at peace, is still the same. And the content is, I've chosen not to forgive. I've chosen the ego instead of the Holy Spirit. And that teacher is going to bring me pain, psychological, if not psychological and mental and physical. Let's see. Okay, all choices in the world depend on this. You choose between your brother and yourself, and you will gain as much as he will lose, and what you lose is what is given him. How utterly opposed to truth is this, when all the lesson's purpose is to teach that what your brother loses, you have lost, and what he gains is what is given you. And there's a huge hint right there, uh, not so subtle, that it's all about shared interests. And I think that's why Ken Ken Wapnick in his initial comments on Journey Through the Manual says, the 2 points that Jesus wants to get in the Manual for Teachers is shared interests, which is are the real alternative, and trusting the Holy Spirit to find that shared interest and to begin to practice that as much as we can. He has not left his thoughts, but you forgot his presence and remembered not his love. So he's basically saying, we intentionally chose against peace, but that's there's another real alternative. No pathway in the world can lead to him, nor any worldly goal be one with his. What road in all the world will lead within, when every road was made to separate the journey from the purpose it must have, unless it be but futile wandering? Whenever I see the word futile now, I quite often think of Ken Wapnick's wonderful audio, and I think there's a little book too, is that From Futility to Happiness, about the myth of Sisyphus, which is, in the Greek mythology, the guy who's forever doomed to pushing the rock up the hill and then have it coming tumbling back down upon him. But that's I think the part of the daily practice of just looking at all the stuff we do in the world, and if we can remember more and more often that there's a real alternative possible, a world I want within the dream of the world, that's the world of listening to the Holy Spirit's translation of everything instead of ego's misinterpretation of everything. Okay, so let's see. How foolish and insane it is to think that there could be a road with such a name. Where could it go? And how could you made to travel on it, walking there without your own reality at one with you? And our own reality, of course, is the shared reality. And the birth of the Christ, metaphorically, in this time of year, is the birth of the recognition that our shared interest, and the one shared interest we all have is waking up from the dream of separation, right? Is really what constitutes the foundation of that real alternative. Forgive yourself your madness and forget all senseless journeys and goalless aims. And of course, he's not saying, don't do stuff in the world, don't stop brushing your teeth or paying your taxes or driving to get groceries, or, just all the everyday mundane things we do, but just do them with a different teacher. It says they have no meaning. Well, meaning that if we do them on our own, in isolation with separate interest instead of shared interest, that's pretty meaningless. And that's hellish. Is to tie into Dave's story in the back of the car. You cannot escape from what you are, for God is merciful and did not let his son abandon him. For what he is, be thankful, for in that is your escape from madness and from death. Nowhere but where he is can you be found. There is no path that does not lead to him. I like that last line a lot. Oh, the whole section I think is profound, but that last line says, no matter what, it's inevitable that we're going to choose the teacher of peace and forgiveness, because the fake alternative isn't working. And sooner or later, we'll admit completely and generalize completely all the little upsets that seem to be the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune of everyday life become the opportunities to just say, I have another choice. I have another opportunity to choose peace. So any comments on that wonderful section 4 of chapter 31 so far?
When Dave comes back, we should get his story again so it's on tape, on video.
Okay, yeah.
So wherever Dave, come back, Van Dyke. And then the other thing, I was thinking about those 3 D words: deceive, delude, and distract. Deceive, delude, and distract. And certainly from Jesus' point of view, they're all synonymous, and they all keep us in hell. We keep ourselves in hell. And then I was wondering how each one is kind of not so subtly maybe a little different than the others, like how is deceive different than delude? And then how is delude different than distract? It feels like almost one leads to the next. But I don't know, I was just playing with that for a while. But they certainly all three join together to keep me in hell when I'm doing that to myself.
Yeah.
I'm making up hell and then I believe in it. And then I deceive myself. I'm certainly deluding myself. And then I'm certainly distracted from where the real issue is.
Yeah, good point. And I've really, Tim, I really appreciate what you've been doing a lot lately is taking one of the words, you know, from the two thought systems and just putting it on Ken's chart and just showing how it goes throughout the chart. Because really the equivalencies, you know, I think it's really helping us to generalize and notice how deception, delusion, divisiveness, you know, it doesn't have to be alliterative words, but there's a whole bunch of, you know, related ideas that basically it's a package deal. It really is a whole you know, all inclusive system. Abe has something. Abe?
Yeah, you know, one of the most comforting things I find of the course is this idea that all roads lead to Rome. It doesn't matter how lost we get. It doesn't matter how messed up. We will get there, and you know, and it doesn't matter the path we're on at any given time either. We will get there. I mean, there's no other thought system that says that.
Exactly. So
yeah, I just really find a lot of comfort in that.
It is truly comforting, isn't it? Yeah. And I think that's the comfort that we're drawn to. That's the inexorable longing that we all feel to know that there's something beyond this world that we want. Sounds like a workbook lesson. I had a little fun last night putting together a little graphic. Let's see if I can do this, get the right one here. Does that work? Is that reading correctly, right for left?
Backwards.
Okay, how about that one then?
That works.
There we go. Okay, yeah.
No, I read better the other way. I was no.
So anyway, I was thinking, you know, what if Jesus was in marketing and sales? You know, what would he be using? You know, a lot of times you go on the web and, you know, people buying stuff online on the holidays, you know, and there's these comparison charts, you know, the consumer reports, and you compare the features. Well, what if we compared the features of the two thought systems? You know, actually, I pick red for the ego and green for the Holy Spirit. And then I realized, oh, Christmas colors, how appropriate. But anyway, I just had a little fun putting this together. I'm going to see if I can scoot out of the way. I'll have to do the mirror thing. And let me go to a version that's on my screen that's a little bigger here on another app. So let's see. Right. That should do it. Okay. So yeah, I was just thinking, well, you know, if Jesus was going to do, you know, a marketing pitch and if he had a website that was trying to convince us of which thought system, you know, side-by-side comparison here for, you know, competitive analysis, you know, what would be the selling points of the Holy Spirit? And so I started off with, well, the ego is 100% insane, 24/7, 365. As Ken Wapnick points out, it's completely consistent. But the asterisk there and then the fine print of its brochure is, yeah, but it's completely insane. So, and the Holy Spirit, fortunately, is 100% sane 24/7, 365 too. So, but we're just choosing back and forth between those two thought systems, right? So just comparing the first line there, the identity of the ego is based on separation. It's finite, it's temporary, it's valueless, and its big, you know, selling point is wow, we get to have a we-they, you know, battlefield orientation to everything, whether it's subtle or not so subtle. And the Holy Spirit's it's a shared identity. It's infinite. It's permanent. It's invaluable, and it's kind of the bedrock of the pure non-dual awareness. And that's something that you know, if we think, well, let's get something that won't last, you know, if you're reading a sales brochure and you read something, well, this is going to wear out really quickly. Well, really quickly is you know, a few decades. Bodies wear out pretty quickly, and certainly the personalities that are projecting. So it's like, you know, right off the bat, we got a huge advantage in the Holy Spirit. So check one for Holy Spirit and X1 for the ego. So then we go down to, you know, the identification continues here with the dream figure for the ego. It's oblivious, mindless, self-absorbed, and oh, so exclusive. It's only my problem, and it's only my success. It's only my, whatever. And it's the what's in it for me at the exclusion of everyone else principle on steroids, right? The Holy Spirit says, yeah, but here's another option. Here's a real alternative. Here's a world that I do want. I could be a dreamer instead of the dream figure, and I could observe without judgment and be mindful and inclusive. And then my identity doesn't have to, be upset when and be subject to jealousy, for example, when someone else seems to have a success, because I realize, like, well, everyone's success is my success. Everyone's peace is my peace. So moving down to the third item: consistently merciless, cruel, annoying, condemning, and vicious. If you spell it out, if you really kind of observe objectively what the ego's characteristics are and put them side by side, it's like, this is not a fair fight. But that's what Holy Spirit wants us to do, is to see them side by side here. So, our Holy Spirit is consistently merciful, gentle, patient, tolerant, and there's a nice little byproduct. We're joyous because of that. So, and then, of course, as foundational ideas in the ego's thoughts, and we got sin, guilt, and fear for all. Nobody's exempt from that. But we have a strategy. Of course, it doesn't work. Another asterisk, fine print. We have this strategy of projection, and we project that sin, guilt, and fear onto all of the others in our world, and they become the enemies. And the Holy Spirit says, well, there's a real alternative here. Let's try generous innocence for all throughout eternity. How's that? Simple. One application does the trick. No repeat is necessary in eternity, but where we think we are, we need to keep repeating the forgiveness lesson, right? So then we've got sacrifice, martyrdom, victimhood, and we have to have scapegoats. I mean, without a scapegoat, our whole basis for an identity is starts to get pretty shaky. Okay. So Holy Spirit says, not so fast. We could choose a thought system where we're not upset by a completely neutral world. How would that be? Can everybody duck down? I don't know if anybody ever could read those. If you want to do, you use speaker view instead of gallery view to see the fine print. So then we get to uncertainty from trusting in a lonely personal interests. When we think we're on our own, that's kind of scary, and it's lonely, and it's not much fun. But when we see that we have the support from Holy Spirit in every moment, no matter what we seem to be doing in the level of form, that it provides us a calm, and that's from trusting in the shared interest that we have with the Holy Spirit, as well as everyone's true being. Another thing that differentiates the ego is that differences are crucial, and without those, we couldn't seem to be misunderstood. If everybody's in the same boat and we're all fighting the same hard battle, then that kind of puts the kibosh on the ego's thing. But then ultimately, if the Holy Spirit leads us past the battleground altogether, then why would we need differences? So universal sameness affords effortless compassion. So if we're all the same, then it's easy to be compassionate, because I'm being compassionate to myself ultimately. But certainly I can see the sameness is kind of the gateway thought that leads to the oneness, right? The ego, of course, is obsessed with form, appearances, and invested in conflict. Nothing so blinding as perception of form. We look at all the stuff in the dream and think, oh, I've got to fix that. And there's nothing wrong with doing stuff, but if we can do it with the attitude of, this is a classroom for mindfulness. This is a classroom for looking at, am I at peace with what I'm doing at every moment? Then I can recognize how unconsciously I might be invested in conflict, and really setting myself up for just an endless Sisyphus cycle of okay, the rock's going to come tumbling down again, and I'll have to keep pushing it back up again. And the Holy Spirit's alternative, a gentle, acceptance of the mind's content of guiltlessness. So if we see that in everything, there's an opportunity to see guiltlessness and sinlessness and innocence in everyone and everything, no matter what the situation is, that's easy in truth. Well, it certainly is simple. It takes a lot of practice to where it seems easy, but I think Holy Spirit keeps telling us that really is the only way you're going to be able to drop having to keep track of gazillion different details in an insane dream, is to generalize and apply the same attitude of forgiveness to everything. And in the ego, basically, it wouldn't put that attribute on its sales brochure, but the Holy Spirit is full disclosure here, miserable, but in deep denial, seeks but never finds. Okay, well, again, the ego's brochure is going to look a whole lot different because it's going to distort everything and turn all of its disadvantages into seeming advantages. But it'll smell fishy when we look at it carefully. If we really do our due diligence and look at the claims on its marketing brochure, we'll see, there's no substance there. It's really a pretty miserable thought system. Okay, it's always seeking but never finding. And Holy Spirit's real alternative, let's see if I can get over here. It's happily corrected. We find loving kindness within, and we extend that to all when we practice the 3 steps of forgiveness. We basically have to just look at the insanity that seems to be outside, bring it inside, see that never happened inside either, both with Holy Spirit's help, and then just the 3rd step is just allow the correction to just be there, because the correction is nothing happened. And then it's, if everyone is us, then loving kindness is just automatically extended, and that shared interest really becomes the guiding principle, the guiding star. So back on the ego roster, we've got body identification limited by birth, dreams, and death. All the dreams that seem to fill the space between birth and death, except like in, I think, the early part of the course, I think it's chapter 5, where Jesus says, I've saved every loving thought and all the kindnesses and purified them of their errors. So that had nothing to do with bodies. That had to do with the decision of right-mindedness. So the ego tries to co-opt all those things. Oh, that was me. I did that. And the Holy Spirit says, not so fast. No, you can't take credit for that. So the 3rd to last one here is spirit identification. It's not limited by what seems to change. So if we're identified with what doesn't change, we don't have to every day come up with a new game plan. We just have to consistently practice Holy Spirit's forgiveness over and over again. Okay, 2 more. The ego, again, not on its full disclosure sheet, which it doesn't have, is divisive, narcissistic, paranoid, defensive, and totally invested in separate interests. And Holy Spirit says, where we're going, the only way to fly is shared interests. And your call for love is really mine. And we can all afford to be open-hearted and open-minded. And last but not least, the ego is threatened by everything, and it takes its special stories very, very seriously. And the Holy Spirit says, your story is a silly, funny, forgivable story. It's just little blips in the radar. And we can afford to gently laugh, not in a derisive way, but just smile and gently laugh when we see ourselves, doing silly stuff, and then say, wow, how forgivable is that? And then the same with everyone else. It's like, that's my call for love when we see it seemingly outside. So anyway, any comments or questions about the Holy Spirit's marketing comparison chart for the 2 thought system?
That's pretty intense. I was thinking, when Dave told his parents that, and they that we're really in hell, this can't be heaven, and they go, oh, why, honey? And then he goes through the 12 talking points on the left. Well, let me tell you, parents. Let me tell you about these terrible things. And then he points out, of course, at the end, that all roads in hell lead to heaven. Abe's thing. They all lead to the good side of the chart.
Exactly.
You said all that, Dave, right?
Yeah, I said that.
On some level, we all know that, no matter where we are in life, right?
I'll just play the ego and co-opt all that. I'll take credit for all of that stuff. As I recall, it was very quiet in the front seat.
I think Lisa and Stephen, maybe a couple others said something. Lisa?
Bruce, I love that chart. Is there any way that we can get a copy of that?
Oh, I'll post it online. So yeah, and I'll send it to Tim and Lynn too. So yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Stephen?
Yeah, I took a screenshot of both sides when you moved. I was going to just let you know, I really thank you for this. This is really good. I'm going to read it every morning for a little while. It just puts a stark view of the differences, and it's really, really helpful. Appreciate you putting it together. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you print it small enough and put it on your fridge, people that walking by might think it's just a holiday message, and until they read the fine print, right? So, but it is a holiday message, a true holiday message, right there.
My ego liked it when your head was blocking the green side. You shouldn't have been sliding back and forth.
Okay. Anything else on that? So, all right. Okay. Well, meanwhile, we can now, I think we've got a preface there for reading today's work, or the lesson 129. Does anyone want to read the first paragraph of lesson 129? Volunteers?
I will, Bruce.
Okay, thanks, Lynn.
Took a minute to get there. All righty. Beyond this world, there is a world I want. This is the thought that follows from the one we practiced yesterday, which was the world I see holds nothing that I want. You cannot stop with the idea that the world is worthless, for unless you see that there is something else to hope for, you will only be depressed. Our emphasis is not on giving up the world, but on exchanging it for what is far more satisfying, filled with joy, and capable of offering you peace. Think you this world can offer that to you?
Any thoughts on that?
Takes a while to learn that.
Yeah, we're all in the same boat, huh? We're all learning to, with Holy Spirit's help, put those two thought systems side by side in our mind and say, oh man, why would I keep choosing that one? Yeah, thanks. How about paragraph 2? Anyone for that?
I will do it, Bruce.
Thanks, Kishore.
It might be worth a little time to think once more about the value of this world. Perhaps you will concede there's no loss in letting go all thought of value here. The world you see is merciless indeed, unstable, cruel, unconcerned with you, quick to avenge and pitiless with hate. It gives but to resent and takes away all things that you have cherished for a while. No lasting love is found, for none is here. This is the world of time where all things end.
Any reflections on that, Kishore?
I like the line which Lynn talked about. Our emphasis is not giving up the world, but on exchanging it for what is far more satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of my fear occasionally when I'm in complete peace, and there are moments I'm like, what's happening here? I need something. Actually, I actually feel like I need some problem to be handling it. I cannot sit quiet or in silence or anything. And then I catch myself. It's all right. This is what it's all about. Just be doing nothing. You don't have to do anything. That's the part. It's really hard for me because my mind is like always have to fix things, do things, see things, or judge things. It's all comes down to judging. So that's the part I really like. It's not giving up this world, but exchanging it for a peaceful one.
Thanks. Anyone else relate to Kishore's predisposition of wanting to fix and change and manipulate and I sometimes use the dream repair technician metaphor. It's like I've got my dream repair technician hat on. It's like, oh, there I go again. But we can do it with the Holy Spirit and just say, oh wow, how amusing, how silly that I was setting myself up to be upset or disappointed by outcomes that happen or don't happen, kind of thing.
Well, what's hitting me is it's a money back guarantee. I mean, it's not like we have to give up the world completely. Right. We don't like this one he's going to offer us. We can exchange it back. I mean, there is a refund here. You don't have to give up this world completely, he says, but you might want to exchange it. Exactly. Check it out. Mm-hmm. Try this product.
Exactly. The other thing I didn't mention on Holy Spirit's marketing brochure, in addition to the money back guarantee, is that the world back guarantee maybe. Some of that reminds me of it. I've been to Hawaii a couple of times. One time I was on the island of Maui and there was a garbage truck that went by, and I always like what it said. It says satisfaction guaranteed or double your garbage back. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, that one of the things that's probably not, is obvious on the Holy Spirit's brochure is that the customer support aspect. We've got a 24/7, 365 Holy Spirit hotline that's standard equipment for every one of us, right? So that's pretty cool. I mean, to have that tech support available all the time, and just you don't even have to pick up your phone. It's even closer than that. So that's pretty cool.
And a real person, well, real, the Holy Spirit will actually answer.
Really.
That's kind of a scary thought.
Yep, a real being. Yeah, not an automated system. Kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I also was thinking, well, let's see, on the brochure that I didn't get, the part I didn't get to, I was going to have a little testimonial section and have satisfied customers include Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Buddha, Ken Wapnick, Mooji, Nisargadatta, Ramana Maharshi, Shakespeare. And so, just have little cartoon bubble heads there, with little quotes of testimonials kind of thing, but why not, right? So how about the next paragraph? Any volunteers? Dave.
Is it a loss to find a world instead where losing is impossible, where love endures forever, hate cannot exist, and vengeance has no meaning? Is it loss to find all things you really want and know they have no ending and they will remain exactly as you want them throughout time? Yet even they will be exchanged at last for what we cannot speak of. For you go from there to where words fail entirely, into a silence where the language is unspoken and yet surely understood. Yeah. I guess the deeper that we get into our capital S self, our Christ self, the more completeness we experience until oneness is what we are. And then there's no need for communication with anything else. We're just always in communication.
Yeah, that's the presence we're all drawn to. That that the prompting that somehow, for at least a bunch of us that are on the screen, and probably a few million people around the world, we're drawn to A Course in Miracles. Someone else might have been to Advaita, Vedanta, someone else might have been drawn to Muji, someone else might have been drawn to something else, but we're all wanting that same ineffable experience, huh? Yeah. How about
I
number
keep going back to, the scene in the car. If Dave's parents had turned and read that paragraph to him, would Dave have freaked out, or would that have sounded good, Dave? like it was almost like, years later, Jesus has to answer your your situation. Yeah.
I probably, I probably just would have said, "Can we get a milkshake now?" I mean, I was a kid, Tim,
Yeah, but you did ask that question. Oh my God.
That's good. Anyone for the fourth paragraph? Kathy.
Communication, unambiguous and plain as day, remains unlimited for all eternity, and God himself speaks to his Son as his Son speaks to him. Their language has no words, for what they say cannot be symbolized. Their knowledge is direct and wholly shared and wholly one. How far away from this are you who stay bound to this world? And yet how near are you when you exchange it for the world you want? That's the first time I've seen the word they capitalized. I may not have ever noticed, but that hits me. Somehow it included me, and I felt that it hit me that way.
Nice. Yeah. Well, we're all included. In fact, that's the only way it works, right? Is everything else is a dysfunctional dream. If we think that any part is left out, then we've got our forgiveness homework to do, and just ask Holy Spirit, okay, help me realize that everyone's included, including this specific person or group of people or thing or weather condition or pandemic or economic whatever, or just no matter what seems to be happening in the dream, no one or no thing is left out of perfect oneness. That the real being behind the form couldn't possibly have gaps in it. There's no gaps. Yeah. How about number
Lynn,
5?
Lynn Altman has some.
Oh, Lynn?
I was noticing the last two sentences there, how far away you are when you stay bound to this world. And this recent scare that I went through with my daughter getting the virus, she's over the hump. It looks like the antibody treatment is working. So I don't know, I'm so shaky about this, but the experience of becoming aware of how vulnerable she is and me, because she's my daughter, makes me realize how deeply attached to the world I am. And that it's almost like, as I'm reading and hearing those words, there's a part of me that's saying, and God damn it, I'm not going to let go of that, because this was really awful. And I need to make something of it. It is a big deal. It's not just a little something. It's very easy for me to become very intellectual about the Course idea. I totally resonate with non-duality. It makes sense to me. It's like the ego is insane. And yet this very sort of physical experience, it's difficult for me to, at this point in time anyway, it's part of the process of working it through, to let that go and move into these beautiful words that have been so sustaining to me all these years. It's like I'm just in that God damn it place. And I just, to be reminded that I can exchange that for something else. That's the part that I'm really struggling with, that my mind has the power to decide that this isn't the world that I want to live in and that I want to make my reality. And that's a choice. I'm really right in that space. So thank you all for listening. I really appreciate that. It's been really challenging time.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think we're all in that same, dilemma. We're all straddling the fence between the two thought systems, throughout every day, and it's just a moment to moment thing of gradually pushing the needle, so to speak, of I think one of the things in one of the talks I was listening from Ken Wapnick, pointing to my other computer, I have a whole bunch of Ken's audios, is that it's not like we just suddenly throw a switch. It's like we're throwing the switch all the time, back and forth between those two thought systems, between the two sides of that chart. But eventually, over time, we gradually, I kind of like to think of it as ramping up the Holy Spirit and then ramping down the ego. And at some point we reach that pivotal point where it's like it's not like a 50% threshold or anything necessarily mathematically, but we get to a point where I think we're all headed to that point. I'll say optimistically, because I don't think, I'm certainly not there yet, but where if we could objectively look at all the moments of the day when we have these sometimes, as you were pointing out, Lynn, very challenging things, and just say, wow, I'm resisting that right now, but I know that there's something beyond that resistance, and I'm willing to persist in the application, because I think it's certainly easy to after a few years to get the theory down pretty well. But then another thing that Ken was quoting someone else, I don't recall who at the moment, but it's the longest journey is the distance from the head to the heart. We got the theory, now the lab assignments, that's what that's what it really tests our mettle, kind of thing. So thanks. Anyone for the next paragraph?
I was sitting with what Lynn was saying, like, it's almost like, God damn you, God. I mean, it's your fault. It's like, I defy you, stars. When Romeo screams at the heavens, I defy you, solstice. I defy you, whatever it is that's defining all this crazy stuff. Like all that stuff on the left side of the chart, the red side, it's not my fault. I think it's true, but God did this. God allows this. God damn you, God. And that, that's a really honest place, I think, to get in this process. We don't want to stay there. We want to get to where Kathy Kosin was, that we are part of the capital T, they. When we say Merry Christmas, we're really saying that, to our own, each other's Christ self. It's acknowledging that. It's namaste. I bow to the Christ in you. I bow to the Christ in me. But there's that phase of God damn you, God, that we got to admit and get through and be willing to let go of blaming God for all that stuff.
We're going to take the ego, lowercase g, God, off the throne first, before it makes room in our mind for the capital G that was always there. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And anyone else for the next paragraph?
I would like to.
Myra?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Myra. Thanks.
Now is the last step certain. Now you stand an instant space away from timelessness. Here can you but look forward, never back, to see again the world you do not want. Here is a world that comes to take its place as you unbind your mind from little things the world sets forth to keep you prisoner. Value them not, and they will disappear. Esteem them, and they will seem real to you. I like that the last step is certain. Whatever is going on here, it's guaranteed, says Jesus. It's all a happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
We're at home. Everything's all right. Okay. And he says it's just an instant away. That I love it, all those little parts in the course. How long is an instant? We have absolutely no idea, because we dreamt up time in such a crazy way. How long is an instant? 2 years, 80 years, 5,000 years? I don't know. How long is an instant? But it's an instant like that. And then he's talking about the real world, of course. And the real world is something that I don't know. It sounds great. I can't wait, but I don't know anything about that. That's above my, I don't know how you would say that in English, because in Dutch they say it's above my hat.
Yeah.
But
That works.
That's just a literal translation. I don't think you say that in English.
Yeah.
Do you have something you say when something you can't, you can't understand it? It's above your
Pay grade is a phrase I hear a lot.
okay, pay grade. Okay.
Yeah.
It's over my head. It's over my head.
Over my head. Yeah.
Pay grade. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Bruce. So that's all. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And I resonate with that, which you shared too, Mara, is this like that the certainty, the last step is certain. I remember years ago reading the course early on, and I actually was writing a little thing about the inevitability of the inner comfort that, that's something that just struck me that, early on. It's like, wow, that really is something to keep us deepening our practice of the course, is knowing that the comfort that we really want isn't outside, and it's inevitable, and it's beyond anything we can imagine. In fact, I was going to, thank you for reminding me that, because I'd like to read something that fits nicely with that, if I can find it real quickly. Maybe someone knows where it is. It's the section where it says, can you imagine what it would be like to have no cares, no fears, no concerns? Does anyone remember where that is by any chance? Let's see if I can find it here real quick. And let's see here. Anyway, how about if someone reads the next paragraph? And I'll look for that too. Any volunteers?
Hey, Bruce.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
We're in 6, right?
Uh-huh.
Such is the choice. What loss can be for you in choosing not to value nothingness? This world holds nothing that you really want, but what you choose instead, you want indeed. Let it be given you today.
Chapter 15.
It waits, but for your choosing it, to take the place of all things you seek, but do not want.
And we're back to the comparison chart, right? We just have to see that the world that we see holds nothing that we want, but what we do want has everything we want. And again, it would be, in this world, we'd be probably taken to court for making unsubstantiated claims, but I think this is, beyond the scope of what we can imagine. So. But speaking of which, thank you, Dave. And also I found it as well. This is what the paragraph I was looking for is the very first paragraph in the chapter 15, the Holy Instant, 2 Uses of Time. Can you imagine what it means to have no cares, no worries, no anxieties, but to be perfectly calm and quiet all the time? I mean, just that first sentence alone does it. And yet that is what time is for, to learn just that and nothing more. God's teachers cannot be satisfied with his teaching until it constitutes all your learning. He has not fulfilled his teaching function until you become such a consistent learner that you learn only of him. When this has happened, you will no longer need a teacher or time in which to learn. So, yeah, that's hinting at what's beyond the threshold of the end of this curriculum, right? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to read paragraph 7 in the lesson. Practice your willingness to make this change 10 minutes in the morning and at night, once more in between. Begin with this. Beyond this world, there is a world I want. I choose to see that world instead of this, for here is nothing that I really want. Then close your eyes upon the world you see, and in the silent darkness, watch the lights that are not of this world light one by one, until where one begins, another ends, loses all meaning as they blend in one. read the next couple of paragraphs too. Today the lights of heaven bend to you to shine upon your eyelids as you rest beyond the world of darkness. Here is light your eyes cannot behold, and yet your mind can see it plainly and can understand. A day of grace is given you today, and we give thanks. This day we realize that what you feared to lose was only loss. Now do we understand there is no loss, for we have seen its opposite at last, and we are grateful that the choice is made. Remember your decision hourly, and take a moment to confirm your choice by laying by whatever thoughts you have and dwelling briefly only upon this. The world I see holds nothing that I want. Beyond this world, there is a world I want. So, any comments on the lesson so far?
And on Netflix, I don't know what that means, but Netflix always has this number one thing everybody's watching. Well, it's Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and it's a movie with the young black man who just passed away. Can't think of his name, but anyway, it's really good. And there's this incredible scene that really addresses what Lynn Altman was talking about, raging against God because something terrible that happened in that young man's childhood. And it's intense. And he stays stuck in it. He's not able to get beyond it. Doesn't have a sense of how to get beyond it. But it winds up basically, he winds up doing the same terrible things to his own friends that were done to his mother and him when he was a child, because he stayed stuck in that mess. It's good. It's really good.
Yeah, and it seems like it's a lot of times it's not the little things that those life-changing revelations that give us the power to go deeper and recognize that there is a real alternative. There is a real true comforter in our mind, but we have to ask for it, and we don't always accept it immediately. Needless to say, in fact, even if it takes lifetimes, it's still worth it, because eventually we will. I think that's the inevitability that, to me, I think is so crucial in the course, that sooner or later, whether it's in the form of a course or some other teaching or whatever, we will all return to that place in the mind that offers us the peace that we want. Anything else? I've got a little quote from. Actually, I was thinking actually a little bit more about the black hole supernova metaphors. So I just wrote a little bit, and then I'll close with a quote from chapter 11. Black hole or eternal supernova. Again, the physical metaphors don't really hold very, very well, because black holes and supernovas are both things that come and go in time. In fact, supernovas usually last a very short time, filling the galaxy with light briefly and then winking out, relative to most of the space around it. But the real Christmas star, I think, that we're talking about, the real alternative, the world that we want, is really, and it would be kind of like an eternal supernova, one that doesn't change. It's like what Shakespeare put in Sonnet 116. The star to every wandering bark. Every boat that's lost at sea, could follow that star, that lighthouse, and that's the inner guidance that we all have. So I just writing a little bit. The ego never happened in truth, but the inextinguishable light in our minds is obscured by our attraction to guilt, which casts a shadow on our perception of everything and everyone in this dream world. Like the inhabitants of Plato's cave allegory, our ego filter of looking darkly, intentionally, sees fearsome shadow figures of guilt everywhere, distorting and obscuring everything into separate, meaningless blobs of warring monsters. Holy Spirit, on the other hand, in its unending supernova light, illuminates the entire cosmos of spirit, seeing innocence everywhere, its unchanging blessing of certain, unassailable peace is freely given to all creation. Ego rehearses division, disappointment, and despair and is never satisfied. Holy Spirit accepts only the infinite illumination of all-inclusive innocence. So we're forever presented with those two alternatives side by side in our mind. And when, again, need throughout the year, and sometimes especially in the holiday seasons when things seem to escalate in different ways, be really patient and gentle with ourselves and allow ourselves to find the peace that is inside. So again, the word comfort comes to mind. So I found this quote that I think fits very nicely. And unless there's anything else, I'll conclude with that. Any other comments or questions so far? Okay. All right. This is from chapter 11, section 3, paragraph 2 and 3. God's Son is indeed in need of comfort, for he knows not what he does, believing his will is not his own. The kingdom is his, and yet he wanders homeless. At home in God, he is lonely, and amid all his brothers, he is friendless. Would God let this be real when he did not will to be alone himself? And if your will is his, it cannot be true of you, because it is not true of him. Oh, my child, if you knew what God wills for you, your joy would be complete. And what he wills has happened, for it was always true. When the light comes and you have said, God's will is mine, you will see such beauty that you will know it is not of you. Out of your joy you will create beauty in his name, for your joy could no more be contained in his. The bleak little world will vanish into nothingness, and your heart will be so filled with joy that it will leap into heaven and into the presence of God. I cannot tell you what this will be like, for your heart is not ready. Yet I can tell you and remind you often that what God wills for himself, he wills for you, and what he wills for you is yours. Okay. Go forth and be comforted and comforting. And avail yourself of opportunities to gladden yourself.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
And
Thanks,
happy holidays.
Bruce. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Bruce.
Bruce. Very good.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bruce.
Really wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you.